Picture this. A man walks onto a stage. You're in the audience. And so are a few thousand other people. Nobody here paid for a concert. Nobody paid for a comedy show. Every single person in this room paid real money to learn how to sell. He tells you his story is redemption. He calls himself reformed. He says he's a changed man. But here's what isn't printed on your ticket. According to federal court filings, this man still owes $97 million. Not allegedly. Owes. Right now, while he's signing autographs in the lobby, taking photos with you, smiling for the camera. You know him by one name, the Wolf of Wall Street. His real name is Jordan Belfort. And somewhere between the prison sentence and the standing ovation, something got buried. On stage, he's told audiences that 95% of what he did was legitimate business. You can find that claim, word for word, in interview footage. But federal prosecutors told a courtroom something very different. They argued his old company never functioned as a real Wall Street firm at all, not in substance, and not in spirit. One of those two stories doesn't survive contact with the paperwork. Stick with this video, and you'll know exactly which one by the end. You've probably watched the movie. You might even love the movie. This isn't that. This is what happens after the credits roll, when the cameras leave and the bill is still sitting there. Unpaid. Follow the money. It always tells you where a story actually goes. 1989, Lake Success, Long Island. Not Manhattan. Not Wall Street. Not even close. Picture a low, unremarkable office building. The kind you drive past without a second glance. Deliberately chosen because it sat just far enough from Manhattan regulators to buy a little breathing room. Two men walk in with a plan. Jordan Belfort, a college dropout who had already failed at selling meat and seafood door to door. And Danny Porush, a guy with no real finance background and an appetite for whatever it took to get rich fast. They buy out a tiny brokerage called Stratton Securities. They rename it Stratton Oakmont. And they build something the financial world has a very specific, very ugly name for, a boiler room. To staff it, Belfort doesn't just hire strangers off the street. According to multiple accounts of the firm, he pulls in friends, neighbors, and even his own father, Max, to fill key positions inside the company, people he believes he can control. New hires walk into something closer to a fraternity hazing ritual than a job interview. You get humiliated in front of the whole floor if you mess up a pitch. You get handed cash and pills if you close a big sale. Within weeks, you've stopped thinking of the person on the other end of the phone as a customer. You think of them as a mark. Here's how it actually worked. Stripped of every bit of Hollywood gloss, Stratton Oakmont would quietly take a position in a penny stock, a tiny, often barely operating company trading for cents on the dollar. Then hundreds of brokers would pick up the phones at the exact same time, all reciting the same script, all promising you the same impossible upside. That's the pump. As ordinary people bought in, teachers, retirees, small investors who trusted a confident voice on the other end of the line, the price would climb. Not because the company was suddenly worth more, because demand was being manufactured, one phone call at a time, one nervous yes after another. If you'd picked up that phone yourself, here's what you would have heard: total confidence, zero hesitation, a voice that sounded like it already knew your decision before you'd made it. That voice was the entire product. The stock was just the delivery mechanism. Then came the dump. Once the price hit a target the firm had set in advance, Belfort and his inner circle quietly sold their own shares into that inflated price. The stock would collapse right afterward. The people who bought in last, the ones who trusted the pitch, were left holding nothing. You've probably seen this firm in a movie. What the movie skips past is the scale of it. At its peak, Stratton Oakmont employed more than 1,000 brokers, all working phone banks in shifts like a factory floor. The firm was tied to stock issues worth over $1 billion. And by their own later admission in federal court, Belfort and Porush ran this exact scheme for 7 straight years, manipulating the stock of at least 34 different companies. This wasn't one bad trade you could write off. This was an assembly line, built to run on repeat. The lifestyle all of it funded became the stuff of legend: the parties, the drugs, the yacht that would eventually sink off the coast of Sardinia. But strip away the excess for a second, and what's actually left underneath is simple: a business model built entirely on convincing strangers to buy something worthless, using nothing but a phone, a script, and your trust in a stranger's voice. But the ledger didn't match. By 1992, The Securities and Exchange Commission had seen enough. Regulators opened a formal case against Belfort and Porush, accusing them of manipulating microcap stocks and violating federal securities law. If you were watching from the outside at the time, this firm still looked untouchable. From the inside, the walls were already starting to close in. 2 years later, in 1994, Stratton Oakmont settled that case. The firm paid $2.5 million. Belfort himself was personally banned from running the company and forced to sell off his stake. You'd think that would be the end of it. It wasn't. It was only the warning shot. The National Association of Securities Dealers, the regulator now known as FINRA, had been circling Stratton Oakmont since the day its doors opened. By December of 1996, regulators had finally had enough. The firm was expelled from the industry entirely. Stratton Oakmont, the company, was dead. Jordan Belfort, the person, was not done. In 1999, federal prosecutors indicted him on charges of securities fraud and money laundering. And this is where the story stops being about stock tickers and starts being about loyalty. Because Belfort made a choice you should sit with for a second. He pleaded guilty. And then he became an informant for the FBI, wearing a hidden microphone to record conversations with the very same partners and subordinates who had helped him build this empire in the first place. Think about that for a moment. The men who'd helped him build a 1,000-broker operation, who'd followed his script word for word, who trusted him enough to do exactly what he told them. Those are the men he helped put away to shorten his own sentence. If you're looking for the moment this story stops being about Wall Street and starts being about character, this is it. This is not a story about a financial genius who simply got unlucky. This is not a story about a Wall Street talent who pushed a little too far. This is a story about a man who, the moment the walls closed in around him, sold out the people closest to him to soften his own landing. Hold that thought. July 18, 2003. Jordan Belfort stands in a federal courtroom, and you can almost feel how quiet that room must have been. The sentence, for years in prison. The bill, $110.4 million in court-ordered restitution, owed to roughly 1,500 people his firm had defrauded out of an estimated $200 million. For years sounds like justice. On paper, if you're only reading the headline. He served 22 months of it, at a minimum security facility in Taft, California, the kind of sentence that looks less like punishment and more like a brief, uncomfortable pause before the next act. And here's where the redemption narrative you've probably already heard begins writing itself. Inside that facility, Belfort shares a cell with comedian Tommy Chong, who is serving his own sentence at the time. According to Belfort's own account, it's Chong who pushes him to start writing down everything that happened. That manuscript becomes a memoir. The memoir becomes a movie. Martin Scorsese directs it. Leonardo DiCaprio plays him on screen. The film goes on to make over $400 million worldwide and earns 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. You watched that film. Maybe you watched it more than once. You laughed at the right moments. Because the script wanted you to. What it didn't show you is what was happening at that exact same time. To the 1,500 people the real version of that story actually defrauded. Somewhere inside that transformation, you watch a convicted fraudster quietly become a brand. He starts selling something called the straight line persuasion system, a sales training program built on the exact same high-pressure techniques he used inside Stratton Oakmont, just with the fraud surgically removed from the pitch. Court records and industry estimates put that business at $4 to $5 million a year, every single year. And here's the bridge worth sitting with, because it's not really about the 90s anymore. The boiler room didn't die in 1996. It just evolved. The same playbook, manufactured hype, manufactured urgency. A coordinated crowd convincing itself a worthless asset is about to explode, is alive right now. Today, in crypto pump groups and meme stock chat rooms, just running on a Discord server instead of 1,000 phone lines. Belfort himself spent years publicly mocking Bitcoin as a scam, before quietly softening that stance once the markets moved in its favor. You have probably watched this exact pattern play out online yourself, even if nobody ever told you what to actually call it. Now think back to that man on stage. Remember the open question sitting at the start of this video. Here's what the paper trail actually shows you. Of the $110 million Belfort was ordered to pay back, court records as of 2024 show roughly $97 million is still outstanding. in the decade after his release. His voluntary payments toward that debt added up to less than $2 million total. Most of what has actually been recovered, about $11 million of it, was never paid by Belfort at all. It was property seized from him the moment he was arrested. In 2013, the government actually softened his obligation, shifting it from 50% of his earnings down to a flat $10,000 a month for the rest of his life. In 2018, a federal judge ordered the garnishment of his entire stake in a private wellness company, just to push a little more money toward the victim's fund. At that pace, by some public estimates, full repayment would not arrive within this century. This is not a redemption story. This is not a comeback story. This is a debt that is still sitting on the books, decades after the cameras stopped rolling and the applause died down. If you bought a ticket to one of his seminars, you helped fund a lifestyle that's still, on paper, $100 million short of what it owes. That's not an accusation. That's just what the math says. So here is what the ledger actually proves. And you can take this with you. The fact, roughly 1,500 real people lost real money, and more than 80% of what they are owed has never come back to them. The system, federal law, gives prosecutors a 20-year window to collect this debt, and even that window is closing without the balance ever being paid in full. The human nature, persuasion itself, was never actually the crime here. The same charisma that once built a boiler room now sells out auditoriums full of people just like you. The only thing that changed is what's being sold. So here's the question worth sitting with after you close this video. If a man profits from teaching the very skills that defrauded 1,500 people, while he still owes those same people $97 million, does he actually get to call that redemption? Tell me where you land